Well, I suppose yes. So I go on presenting myself. My name is Ursula Bolognani. I work for Ambiente Italia.
We can hear you. Sorry.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Yuri. Okay. So I was saying I'm working for Ambiente Italia, and I'm experienced on waste management and circular economy in particular, and on applying this concept to educational activities as well. As you know, this will be exactly the subject of this webinar, and I will try to be clear and not boring, I hope, but you can ask me questions whenever you want, writing in the chat, and I will answer to any doubts or any need of clearer explanations. So I start with my presentation. Okay, I hope that you can see it well. First of all, I provide you a summary of the contents I'm going to present. I will focus first of all on the concept of sustainable waste management and circular economy, but particularly focusing the attention on how to explain these concepts to teachers and students. And then the second part, I will explain you and provide you some example on how to realize waste prevention action and circular economy project in an education program in schools, and also providing you examples of practical good practices that can be implemented in schools on these issues. And finally, in the last part of the webinar, I will provide you some hints on how to monitor waste production in order to reduce the environmental footprint in the education program. So I'll start with the first part of the webinar, which is the concept of sustainable waste management and circular economy. I provide you some general information. Maybe you are already experienced, but the aim of this part of the webinar is to provide to you some idea of how you can present these concepts to teachers and students. So I start with the basic concepts on sustainable waste management, and the starting point in this sense is the 5-step waste hierarchy that has been set by the European Waste Framework Directive and has been taken up by all the national legislation in EU member states. And as probably you know, the 5-step waste prevention considers prevention as the best option, followed by preparing for use, recycling, and then other forms of recovery like energy recovery, with final disposal such as landfill as the last option. And the aim of all EU policies on this issue is to move waste management up to this waste hierarchy, just so prioritizing prevention, reuse, and preparation for use and recycling. And this is why this strategy is always called, with reference to the 3 main priorities, and it is called the 3Rs strategy, and which is then based on the 3 concepts: reduce, reuse, and recycle. So what do we mean by reduce? This is, well, the basic concept is that the most way to reduce waste is not to create them, first of all. And this means that in order to do waste prevention actions, you first of all have to change the consumption habits and the lifestyles of people. But this means that they also need to find in shops or in their daily life products that have less content of waste, which means less packaging or items that last longly. And this is this brings us to the concept of eco-design of products, and also to the theme of repairing objects that we buy. and not to throw them away once they are not, if they are just little broken. The concept of waste prevention includes also reducing the presence of dangerous substances in products, because this also reduces the impact of waste when they are disposed. So this is mainly the first concept that you have to introduce when you talk about sustainable waste management in school, followed by the second priority, which is reuse, and which involves the repeated use of products or components of products for the same purpose for which they were conceived. And well, one typical example is electronic appliances like refrigerators or ink cartridges or computer printers that can be refurbished for reuse. But when we talk about reuse, it is very important to consider that there are two main differences. When we are talking about objects that are simply reused for the same purpose for which they were created. For example, if we sell a book that we have already used to another customer, then we are talking about waste prevention. If we are repairing objects that have been collected as waste, like bulky waste furniture that is collected by the waste management operator as bulky waste by our houses, then we are talking about preparation for use, which is a waste management operation because it operates on waste, and the operators that are doing this preparation for reuse need to be authorized as waste management operators, and but again they put into use objects like furniture or electronic appliances, and this is the second. The direct reuse of objects goes together with waste prevention, and this is the first priority. Preparation for use is considered the second priority, but is equally important. Then we come to recycle, which is the third priority. So if waste cannot be prevented or reused, then it is important that most of the material they contain is recovered by recycling. And this, it is demonstrated by many studies that it saves a significant amount of material and energy that is taken from the natural environment. And this is very important, and it is a very important issue in Europe, because Europe is dependent on imports of scarce raw materials, and these are contained in waste. So it is very important to recover these materials through recycling. And recycling relies on separate collection of waste by households. So, and the best is the quality of the materials we collect. So the best is the organization of waste collection systems, the high quality and the best, the most efficient recovery of materials can be obtained. So this is really a relevant issue in recycling, and the concept can be explained with reference to what is called downcycling or upcycling. If we collect waste that have a low quality, and if we collect them commingled, that means, for example, all the packaging together, then it is difficult to recycle these objects, producing and to use the secondary raw materials in order to realize products, the same kind of products, and this is called downcycling. For example, if we use the mixed plastic, then usually these are recycled into low quality plastic that is used just for playground, for benches, or for not high value products. while if the quality of the materials corrected is high, and this is an important concept, then it can be upcycled. That means to produce products with a high value, and this is an important issue when talking about recycling. Well, I was saying that the concept is can be explained making reference to the 3R strategies, but indeed we are moving from this concept to a concept of multi-year strategy, because as I was saying, you can include this concept of reuse, reduce, recycle in all the in all different steps of the product producing cycle, that is production, distribution and consumption, starting with the production stage, and then you talk about rethinking or redesigning the project so that the content of resources is they have they use less resources and less dangerous resources, and they are easily disassembled or easily recycled at the end of their life, or they are designed to last longer time. Then if you come at the distribution stage, then it is important to close the loops and in order to assure that the broken products are repaired or remanufactured or redistributed to users. And then when we come at the consumption stage, we talk about what we were saying before, reuse, reduce, recycle, and when they become waste, at least recover energy from them and not landfill. So this is the shift from the simpler concept of reduce, reuse, and recycle to a multi-hierarchy. And this is the shift that brings us to the concept of circular economy. This is not a new concept. I mean, the idea of closing the cycle, following what happens in the natural cycles, is not new. It goes back to the 70s. But what is new is that now the concept is streamlined in all the EU policy, and that also the economic world is paying a lot of attention to these concepts. And what is important to point out is that the concept of circular economy goes beyond the problematic of waste, because it requires that all natural resources are managed efficiently and sustainably through their whole life cycle. And so what we were following before with reference to waste, that is going from raw material, the design stage of products, and then their production and the manufacturing, the distribution, the consumption stage, then the collection of the waste generated, and then recycling, reducing at the minimum waste, then it can be, this should be applied in a circular economy approach to all the resources, including the biotic resources such as biomass, then water, biodiversity, and energy. So this is very important to keep in mind, that when we talk about and when we do education about circular economy, we are not just talking about waste, but we are talking about all the resources. As I was saying, the concept is not new at all, and but in these last years it has been more clearly conceptualized, and who's doing a lot of job in this sense is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And so the most known definition of the circular economy is from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And I read with you the definition. They state that a circular economy is restorative and regenerative by design, and aims to keep products, components, and materials at their highest utility and value at all times. It preserves and enhances natural capital, optimizes resource yields, and minimizes system risks by managing finite stock and renewable flows. The picture you saw in this slide is how they describe the concept, and what is important to say is that they make a clear distinction between biological materials that are restorative by nature and by technical materials that need to be managed following the concept of natural resources and the way of the restoration way of natural resources, but by applying all the activities that I was saying before, that is maintenance, reuse, redistribute, refurbish, manufacture, recycle. So this is basically the concept of circular economy, and it implies a shift from a linear economy model, which has been the one that characterized our business model since a few years ago, and the future that is circular economy. And now we can say that we are in the middle. And in a linear model, the technical and biological materials are mixed up, and so natural resources becomes the input for the economy. They are taken, they are transformed, and then they are disposed as waste. And the energy comes from finite sources. While if we operate in a circular economy system, then biological and technical materials are managed separately, and they are managed in closed loop, and energy comes from renewable sources. So this is the concept that should be clearly explained to students or teachers when talking about these concepts. And what is really important to explain is that circular economy means also new business models. It is not only in order to put in practice the concept I was explaining, it is fundamental that economy changes is more way of is business model, as I was saying. And the basic concepts are I hear a lot of beep, so I just check because I can see if you are writing something, but no, okay, I see that there are no chats, so I go on with the slides, sorry. Okay, business model, I was saying. So first step of this business model is to have circular supplies, which means provide renewable energy, bio-based or recyclable input material to replace raw virgin materials. And you see that these circular supplies that are designed in black should enter the procurement practices in the business models. Then we have the second step of this business model, which is resource recovery, which means to recover usable resources or energy from the waste product, from waste or byproducts. And here you see that this step in the cycle of production comes from the recycling or upcycling activity that again goes inside the procurement procedures, comes from using waste directly as a resource, again in procurement, or by returning byproducts from the manufacturing, which means the outputs, the residues from the manufacturing processes, again to produce new resources. The other fundamental step in the business models is to increase the life extension of the products. That means to extend the working life cycle of products and components by repairing, upgrading, and reselling them. And here you see that this comes from this step, reverse logistic, which means that there should be in place in these business models systems to bring back to the manufacturing the products that are broken, so that the producer can repair it by changing maybe parts of it. So the producer should produce changing parts for making this business model effective and putting it in place. Or again, if we go in the consumption stage, you see here sales and marketing of product use. You find again this product life extension through repair, upgrade, and reselling of repaired objects. Another important step that I've not yet mentioned is sharing platforms. So, and you find this in the product use stage. And sharing platform are enable increased utilization rate of products, and by shared use, access, or ownership. And this is really a concept that is taking place largely, if you think to services like BlaBlaCars or Airbnb or many others are based on the car sharing services that are largely penetrating our business models. Then final step is to promote product as a service, and this is very important because it creates other loops in the supplier chain, and it's a very important step because it means that you lease appliances instead of owning them. And this is very important because it implies that then the manufacturers are interested in making these appliances last longer and to provide maintenance services in the contract. So this is what is at the basis of the circular economy concept, and that if you, it is important to make people understand that this is what we are talking about when we speak about circular economy. So, well, just some few information of where we are in mainstreaming circular economy in the European policies. Well, the first step was taken in July 2014 when the European Commission put forward an initial circular economy package with a communication, and the package which contained some also proposal for revising the waste management directives. But then in March 2015, the Commission withdrew its legislative proposals on waste and the package as a whole, because they wanted to make a way for a more ambitious circular economy package. And indeed, in December, they put forward again a new circular economy package, which included an action plan for the circular economy and 4 legislative proposals introducing new waste management targets regarding reuse, recycling, and landfilling, and many other provisions for fostering the concept of circular economy. And in March 2017, the European Parliament adopted a reading position proposing some improvements or some changes in the proposed circular economy package. And at this stage, there is this consultation between European Parliament and the European Commission in order to finalize the proposal. In the slide I provide you, I don't go further within this subject, but you find in the slide the links to the sites of the European Commission and European Parliament, where you can find further information on this package. So, okay, I come to what maybe interests you more, which is how to explain this concept of sustainable waste management and circular economy to students. And what I try to provide to you with this part of the webinar is to some hints and some resources that you can find also on the web, and that you can use to prepare lessons for students. So, okay, the first suggestion is to clearly explain to students the simple concept of the 3R strategy. And to do this with a lot of examples. I have not prepared for you many examples because I think the concepts are quite easy and you can find examples and explanation, clear explanation also in your own language, just looking at available resources on the web. But, well, just to provide, I anyhow provide you some suggestions, but it's mainly material in English. You can look at the website of the European Week for Waste Reduction. Maybe you already know this initiative. It was launched by a LIFE project co-financed by the European Commission under the LIFE program, and now it's sustained by the European Commission even after the end of that project. And in November each year there is a week where it is proposed the organization of initiatives by schools, businesses, or municipalities promoting waste prevention, but also the general concept of prevention, reuse, and recycling. You can find some resources on the website, a lot of case studies taken from the experience, the best experiences realized and awarded during that week. Here are 3 videos. I don't show them to you, but they are quite simple. They have no words, just the music below, and they are very short, just 1 minute. But they are useful to show to especially kids with simple images the meaning of what do we intend with those 3 concepts. Well, many resources are also provided by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that, as I was saying before, is working a lot on the subject and providing a lot of studies and materials. And they have prepared teaching and learning materials that are freely available for teachers. And they are organizing 6 lesson plans. If you look at them on this website, they provide to you really a description of how to organize the lesson and also the materials to realize the lessons. So, well, other resources that are useful, and maybe we can also look at them together so that you can have an idea of how to use them in schools. There is this video which has been realized by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which explains very clearly for students the concept, what we mean with the concept of circular economy. And there is also this other one, which is the official video prepared by the European Commission, and this provides also some examples of case studies interviewing businesses that are realizing circular economy activities. So this is also interesting, and you can choose one of them. They can be good resources to start talking about these concepts. I share with you, well, I show to you one of these videos because they are short, so you can have a direct idea of how they can be useful in a lesson. Okay, I should have already them open.
For a few billion years, and will be around for many more. In the living world, there's no landfill. Instead, materials flow. One species' waste is another's food. Energy is provided by the sun. Things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we've adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. So what can? If we accept that the living world's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so that we too operate a circular economy? Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff. As they say in the movies, no resources have been lost in the making of this material. So what about the washing machines, mobile phones, fridges? We know they don't biodegrade. Here, we're talking about another sort of rethink, a way to cycle valuable metals, polymers, and alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of individual products. What if the goods of today became the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense. Instead of the throw away and replace culture we've become used to, we'd adopt a return and renew one, where products and components are designed to be disassembled and regenerated. One solution may be to rethink the way we view ownership. What if we never actually owned our technologies? We simply licensed them from the manufacturers. Now, let's put these two cycles together. Imagine if we could design products that come back to their makers, their technical materials being reused and their biological parts increasing agricultural value. And imagine that these products are made and transported using renewable energy. Here we have a model that builds prosperity long term. And the good news is, there are already companies out there who are beginning to adopt this way of working. But the circular economy isn't about one manufacturer changing one product. It's about all the interconnecting companies that form our infrastructure and economy coming together. It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open new perspectives and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustrations of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future.
Okay, so this is a very simple and short video that is easy to use to introduce the subject. And what is also good is that it is translated also in other languages. I'm sure that it is available in Italian. Maybe by browsing on YouTube you can look. Maybe you can find it even in your language. I show you just a very short pieces of the other video that is produced by the European Commission, just to show you, because it provides you some examples, real example of how these concepts are applied in practice by companies.
Owning a good makes sense if that good increases in value. So owning a house makes sense. Owning any disposable good doesn't make sense, so therefore you should rent it. Renting a washing machine makes sense for the user, because basically then you don't have the problems of repairs and maintenance.
I saw new technology coming up, Internet of Things technology. So I thought there should be a way to use appliances as a service and to use the materials again to make new appliances, so not creating any waste. We start with washing machines and tumble dryers. what we say is you don't own it, you just use it. We connect the appliance to the internet, and we do that with a simple plug measuring the energy use. And that way you can also monitor the appliance and give the user feedback on how to use it more efficiently. Right now, Miele delivers the appliances. They do the service on the washing machines and the dryers, and they support bundles with their knowledge of the market and their knowledge of laundry to further build the service. What is actually innovative and really new to this economic model is the way that different people and different parties, institutes collaborate to deliver a whole different experience to the consumer with much less impacts on the future of our planet.
The new Commission has picked up the challenge again. That would really be an opening for a new economy that would be resource efficient, it would be economically profitable. So basically all the things that we want for Europe.
Okay, I wanted to show you this practice because I think it's also a practice that can be applied in schools by leasing printers or copiers instead of buying new or buying them. So it could be also an effective practice in implementing circular economy in schools. But okay, I go back to my presentation. And what is important, especially when you are working with students from the secondary schools or high schools, is to show them a lot of case studies of circular economy in practice. And there are plenty of resources on the web. Here there is a selection I've used for lessons in high school. Well, they are mainly in Italian because the lesson was in Italy. But if you browse internet, you can find it. And it is important to show practices that cover all the stages we have seen. So, for example, here there is one about an app. And it is interesting because it has been developed by young professionals, very young professionals, for recovering the last food from supermarkets, or waste prevention action in the bioeconomy sector. And it is the production of mushrooms using the coffee residues. Or then you have examples on upcycling activities, or an example about very well functioning reuse and preparation for reuse centers, or the concept of 3D printing, which is also an important step in circular economy because it allows an easily printing of parts of objects that can be used to repair them. And then example of sharing economy, and you can have BlaBlaCar or Airbnb, but you can find many other examples on the web. And this is my suggestion, to use these examples and show them what happens concretely to students. And what is also important, it has a lot to do with with your project, Edufootprint, is to explain to students why it is important by using the overshoot day, because it makes them very clear to students that the Earth is not able to sustain the business model that we are implementing in our world. And so explaining then how the overshoot day is going from 1969 up to now is very, very effective to make them aware. But okay, now I stop with the concept of a circular economy and with the suggestion on how you can explain the concept in your schools. And I focused the attention at first on this because in each education program you are going to implement in a school, you should start providing some information, first of all, to teachers, so that teachers can find the best way to provide these contents to their students during the educational activity. But now I come to the main part of the webinar, which is how to realize waste prevention action and circular economy projects in an education program in schools. And okay, here the approach I'm proposing is not valid just for a waste management and circular economy educational program, but it is a valuable approach dealing with each environmental subject, and it is based on the implementation of two different kinds of activities. The realization of specific educational activities with lectures, but mainly because are most effective laboratory works with specialists, or delivery of informative materials, but better site visit to youth centers or waste treatment facilities, and educational activities that include some practical experience. But what is also very important in a well-prepared education program is to implement also specific actions for preventing, reusing and recycling waste at school. And I'm not going to provide you examples of educational activities, because there are really a lot, and you can find resources and hints even in your own language. So that won't be the focus of my webinar, but I will focus mainly on the second step, providing you some example of good practices that you can practically implement in the schools in order to reduce the footprint, the environmental footprint of the school. A suggestion about a useful reference on how to implement educational program on these issues at school. It comes from a Med capitalization project. So as you are working in a Med project, and networking and capitalizing resources that have been prepared by our project is always important. So I propose to you to use it. I've used it for my lesson, and this is a project where Ambiente Italia was involved, so I know what has been done quite well. And it is also available in other languages, so maybe it is easier for you to use it. And I've taken from it the general approach. As I was saying, it is not just focused, it is a general approach that is valid for each theme that you want to develop in your educational program. But okay, the important thing I want to say is that if you want to do a good education program on this issue, you have to work, well, just a while that I drink a bit of water. You have to work on the issue through the whole school year. And so as soon as the school begins, you have to plan in detail your educational programs, and then you have to realize you have to prepare at the beginning all the informative materials you will need and all the supporting tools. You need to involve teachers so that they are familiar with the concepts, how it is explained before, and also with the educational materials you have prepared and with the lessons they have to deliver to their students. Then you have the educational program that can be made, as I was saying, by lecture, but mainly laborative work, site visits. And then you have to start up as soon as possible the practical actions, and we will focus on these in the following part of the webinar. It is always important to foresee final tests for students in order to test if they have, is also in a playful way, if they have assumed the concept, and you can use games for younger children, so creative competitions, and you have plenty of examples on educational activities using this approach, competitive approach among classes. Then it is also important to realize some final activities and celebration, because they allow you to involve also families, and this has a very important effect on promoting the concept of sustainable waste management and circular economy in the local community. But okay, I stop here with the general framework of how to introduce the concept in an education program, and I come to the good practices that you can implement in school. I just checked a while the webinar platform that I'm not seeing it, just to see if you have posted any comment or question, but okay. No, I see that there are no questions posted, so I start with this other part of the webinar. So let's start with the first. Okay, again, I provided to you also with reference to good practices, a useful reference, which is taken again from the website of the European Week for Waste Reduction. In 2012, they have prepared this guide, that collects a lot of examples of practical activities that you can implement, and there are also a lot of activities that can be implemented in schools. So you can find useful suggestions here on how to implement them in practice. And well, but other resources, this is done in 2012, but if you go on the website, you find even many other examples of activities that you can implement in schools on this issue. So, well, the first thing you can do is to deal with paper, and to reduce the use of paper. And well, even if we are in information technologies is spreading, and so the use of paper is slowing down, it remains, especially in schools, one of the main means of information and dissemination. And in industrialized countries, the 87% of writing paper and printing is used. So it is very important to reduce the consumption here. And if we look at the picture, I don't know if you can see it well, but in green you see the consumption of paper, which happens today mainly in America, Europe, which are the first two columns in green, and then in China. And fortunately, here in blue, you see that the estimated growth of this production in the United States and in Europe is foreseen to decrease, but then it will increase a lot in other countries like China, first of all. And so to tackle this issue is really important. And in school, you can do a lot to change the behavior of students and also the school staff in order to reduce the consumption of paper. And the first actions you can do are related to the printers, to the use of printers or photocopiers. And well, the actions are very simple, nothing particular, and you also, for sure, you have it in mind. But what is important is to apply them systematically within the school. So, and to apply them systematically in the school, it means that you have to set all the printers and the copiers so as they are by default applying these practices, which is to print double-sided copies, to print in the modality 2-in-1 or 4-in-1. If you have to print draft copies of documents, and then to use smaller fonts, narrow margins in document. And this is very important to take into account these issues. Very important in the purchasing practices of the school, because you should buy appliances that have with automatic doubles, which today, or with the double scanning, which today is almost the rule. And so this is the first and important thing you have to do in school. But then what is also very important is to dematerialize as much as possible lessons, and to allow, for example, to the students to do their homework on their computers and to deliver it at school in pen drives. So not to use print it or to use a lot of paper to do their homework, and then also to convey messages to parents via email. And today there is also the online register. So this is also means a useful means to reduce the paper consumption in schools. And well, also the use of interactive displays. It is useful for the didactic activities, but it's also important because it allows to save the paper that teachers use to teach to students. And what is also nice in each classroom is to organize paper banks where the students can deposit their one-sided blank pages, and they can also realize some notebooks to use when they have to take notes at school. And then what is really important is to use recycled paper. And this can be used also today because there is good quality recycled paper by substituting completely the paper used in school with the recycled one. And okay, the benefits you can achieve with these actions are relevant. From experiences applied in school, the results observed have been a reduction of 15 up to 25% of paper consumption, so the paper purchased in the school, and the reduction of up to 30% of the paper waste generated. And well, here they say 75% of recycled paper, but I know examples where it has reached even 100%. And of course, this implies also energy and toner savings. And well, here you have two examples of posters. So it is important that in all the schools and where there are the copiers or the printers, there are messages to remind to users that they should reduce the use of paper, they should use recycled paper. So, but this is a very important action to reduce the environmental footprint, and it's not so costly and it's easy to implement. It just requires a full commitment of the school and of the school staff. Okay, so I come to the second good practice, and this is also very important because the theme of food waste is one of the most relevant issues nowadays, because the quantities of food waste that is generated is really huge. And okay, not all schools have canteens, but many of them have this service, which is mostly under the responsibility of the municipalities. And sometimes the schools have their own kitchen inside, and this makes it easier to reduce the food waste. But especially because when the kitchen is not inside the school, then a lot of packaged food is used and transported to the school. So much more waste is produced, not only from the food that is not consumed by the kids, but also from the packaging that is used to transport food. So, and also waste are generated also in some cases because single-use disposable tableware and cutlery are used in the school. So this is another thing that can be cut when applying waste prevention programs in school. And what is impressive is that there is evidence that food waste in schools can be up to 50% of that 50% of the food that enters in the canteen is not consumed and ends up in the trash. So it is really important to take into consideration the possibility to implement these best practice in schools, and there are a lot of examples of very effective programs that can be implemented in the schools at each level, starting from the primary school up to the high school. And in practice, what has to be done in the school? Well, the actions can be taken in 3 fundamental stages of the food delivery in school, which is the purchasing and storage procedures. And here it is important, first of all, to buy products with less packaging. For example, by substituting single portion food such as desserts and yogurts with seasonal fruits, or to buy products with give back packaging, or anyhow at least to easily recyclable packaging, to buy seasonal and local products, and preferably by organic agriculture, because usually these have to travel less, and this is already a benefit, but then as they have to travel less, they need to be less packaged, and so in this way you reduce waste. And then it is fundamental to storage food properly and to pay a lot of attention to the quantities of food you put in your storage. That is not exceeds the needs, so you don't have leftovers. Then in preparing meals, it is very important to optimize the food portion according to effective and active school food needs, and also to define menus, even discussing them with the children, and to prepare them so that they are tasty and appreciated. Of course, they need to be healthy, but they can be healthy and tasty at the same time. And in serving meals, of course, what is really important is not to use single disposable tableware, to serve tap water instead of bottled water. And here we come to another action that I will show you later in another best practice. And then another important thing that you can do is to recover leftover food, donating it to charitable associations or canals. This is not easy to implement, especially for donating cooked food. You need to pay attention to some health requirements, but it starts to be applied in many schools, and if in your municipality there are organizations and charities that do the service, it is worth it to go for it. So, and usually to implement this kind of good practice in school, what you can do with students is to do an audit, a waste audit, and this is always a good starting point in this kind of actions. And here you have some hints on how you can implement it in school. First, you have, of course, to organize your team, to set a date, to decide which food items to collect and measure, because you have to collect the food items that are not consumed and then discarded in trash. You better set up an audit station in the canteen during the day of the audit, so that there the students can interview the other students in order to learn why they did not finish particular food items. And then you have to separate the food items you have collected and to measure them, and according to the results of this measuring, to design your reduced food waste strategy. And well, this is always a good starting point that you can put in an education program when you want to face this issue. And you can also, even if there is not a canteen in the school, you can tackle the issue of food waste by dealing with the pack waste-free food. I mean the food that students and kids bring from home to be consumed, and then to teach them to package them sustainably using reusable items instead of throwaway or disposable ones. Here savings can be, and the environmental benefits can be really relevant. Here I provide you some figures that are taken from a very good practice that has been realized for many years, and maybe it's still going on, and in Czech, in Sweden. And it was an educational program involving all the schools in the municipalities, involving over 6,000 pupils. And the results you can read here in the slides was a very high volume of food waste avoided per year, which means a lot of also economic resources saved and CO2 saved. So you see the figures. And what is always important to correlate in these good practices and when dealing with them in schools is the avoidance of waste, the savings you can have, the economic savings, and the CO2 savings with dealing with your environmental footprint issue makes a lot of sense, of course. Well, okay, here are some more details about this good practice, because I think it's one of it was very well done, so it can be useful if you want to implement it in school to follow this example. Even in the measuring, and they were also, because many schools were involved, and they had also nice competitions among schools. And here you see the summary of the food wastage measures in the school, where you see in green the winner, and at the bottom of the figure the average that was measured in the schools. And here you have a link. It was even this project was not realized but promoted within an Interreg project that was coordinated by the Marche region. And on the site of the Marche region, you find many other practices that can be exemplary on these issues. So, third good practice, I've already cited it before, is the use of tap water in schools. And well, this is particularly relevant in Italy, as in Italy, more than in other European countries, the consumption of mineral bottled water is huge. But it makes a lot of sense, and it is a very educational activity in all the other EU countries. And well, here you see in the picture the consumption of bottled water. Well, they are not really updated data because they are from 2013, but you see here really Italy is one of the worst performing countries. And there are here not the data about the other country where you are coming from, but well, it means that they are not so high as in Italy. But if you consider the average European consumption of bottled water, then in terms of waste generated, you have 25 kilos per capita per year, which is a high it means a high value, because if you consider that on average the per capita generation of waste is between 450 kilograms per capita per year, then 25 kilograms generated just from the consumption of mineral water is a relevant value. So to face this issue in schools is important, and the objective of the action is to change the frequent habit of students to bring to at school the bottled mineral water. And you can also promote, the scope is to promote the use of tap water in school and also in the canteens of the schools. Well, it is not difficult to implement it in schools. Mainly you can, first of all, you can produce some informative material. Here, for example, you see a poster that was developed within a project we have developed in the area of Chianti in Tuscany. It says 1 school a year, 240 bottles, plastic bottles to dispose of. And in that school, we installed a tap water dispenser linked to the aqueduct water system that supply high quality drinking water to schools. But generally, and also in Italy, there are a lot of practices, but for sure there are even more spread in other European countries, is to serve directly tap water in canteens if the quality of water is good, and generally potable water is good. And okay, so there we installed the tap water dispensers, and then we provided also to students flasks, and we promoted, there was the educational program about informative material, and also the monitoring, because the monitoring stage is always important, and to involve students in the monitoring of the consumption reduction, and also the correlation between the water saved and the waste saved thanks to the consumption of tap water is very important. So with students, if you use tap water dispensers, this is easier because they usually have their own measuring system, so that you can always see. And if you want to buy them, pay attention that they have it, so that you can always control the consumption together with students. And then, okay, as to the expected result, before coming to the expected result, I finished explaining what I was saying about monitoring. You can easily transform the liter consumption in waste generated. Here I provide to you a simple estimation method that can be adjusted if you have to consider which is the percentage of plastic bottles versus glass bottles used. Well, usually in schools they are mainly plastic bottles by students, so you see you have to set that percentage if you have just plastic bottles to 100%. Instead, if you have also glass bottles, you can leave it like it is, and then you apply that calculation method. Here in the table you have an average unitary weight per plastic bottle and unitary weight per glass bottle of 1 liter, and then apply this simple calculation together with students. You can find out which is the waste savings you can achieve with this action. And the experiences in schools, starting from that we have realized in the Chianti area, is that the action can bring a reduction in the consumption of bottled water around 50%, which can be, it implies a reduction of 1 ton of plastic waste per year each 2,000 students. So, this is a relevant figure. Okay, this is, let's come up to the 4th action that you can implement. This is also a very good one to be implemented in school because it has a highly educational potential. Not only, First of all, because it allows students to see in practice how the transformation of waste into new resource can work. And it also, well, of course, how it works, composting in school. You can install, well, you need to have a canteen. Well, you can implement it even asking to students to bring food waste from home, but this is not so easy and it implies much more difficulties. But if you have a canteen, then and if you have a garden also, then you can do a very nice, very effective educational program. You can maybe in cooperation with the municipality or with the waste management company, you can install in the school a composter. In some cases, there are also experience using electromechanic composters, but even for educational purposes, a simple composting bin is quite effective. And it teaches to students really how to, well, for them it's almost astonishing to see how this the waste they generate in the canteen can be transported into compost, which is a humus-like nutrient for soil. And then what can be really effective is to make them use this compost in the school garden for horticulture or other experiments. And what is good with this practice is that it provides also rich topic for scientific investigation and for teaching to students the interaction between biological, chemical, and physical processes. Even on this issue, there are plenty of resources. Here I provide you some good examples that you can use, but again, they are in English. You can certainly find them also in your own language, but these are very well done, so you can look at these sites. There are the Compost Tool Specialist manual that has been realized also with students, and it teaches you all the steps for doing lessons and putting in practice this in the school, but also in the Recycle Now website. There are a lot of educational materials that you can use if you want to implement this action in your school. What to do? Okay, well, I'm not going to read with you all this content, but what is important, of course, is to have a to find the place where to locate the compost bin, which should be placed directly on soil or grass, and then to follow all the tips for making a good compost, keeping in mind that you have to create a good balance between green and browns, where green are, well, here you find the example of what is meant with green and grass. And then, but what is important is to involve the students in understanding all these interactions, and to do teams that periodically have the task to monitor how the composting process is going on, and if it's too wet, they add more browns, or if not, they have to add more greens. And so teaching how it works, the process, is the core of this action. And what can be nice and to celebrate this project is also to hold a tree planting event at the end of the school year, and also to plan it considering in order to set up to offset the amount of paper used by your school each year. Considering so you can connect this action also to the consumption of paper. So this could be also a good suggestion. The expected results, I have not quantitative. This is more educational, but quantitative. because anyhow you can't totally compost food waste generated in the school. Even maybe it can be if your school is very small, but otherwise it's most educational. But what is important to explain is that in this way you offset the, well, if bio-waste goes to landfill, which is the case if it is not composted or digested, then it produces in an aerobic condition methane, which is one of the most the most relevant greenhouse gas emission. And so it is important to teach this concept to students related to the implementation of this good practice. Okay, then this is, let's come to the fifth good practice. This is maybe the most common one in schools. It is usually implemented at least in the common areas. And of course, you can do a lot of educational activities related to the recycling at school, because you can involve students in organizing this ineffective separate, in improving the separate collection of waste at school and in the classrooms. And you can, even in this case, do a lot of maybe competitions and educational activities related. Even in this case, I provide to you some examples of resources, effective resources that you can find on the web. These are taken again from Recycle Now, which is a very good educational, online educational program promoted by RAP, which is an organization, UK organization, which provides very useful, also scientific reports on the issue. And okay, here you see that again, the starting point are waste audits, and then the action plan and recycle races, but also many other possibilities. And these all usually are the steps for implementing this kind of actions. Well, here in this case is very important the accordance and involvement of the waste collection utility that is operating in the municipality. It is very important to design clearly the labels to be applied to the containers, and to the involved. Sorry, I have to drink some water because my voice is going away. Okay, as I was saying, it is important to involve the students in preparing the labels, and and as I was saying, for the other good practices, to involve them also in monitoring the quantity of waste separately collected, and to publish the results in the bulletin of the schools. This is very, it involves a lot of students, and also to involve media, to involve the local community, because if you implement a very effective waste collection in schools, then it can promote its implementation in the families, and it is very effective also from the local community in general. That's it. Even in this case, I don't have quantitative results from school experiences, but there are really a lot, and the results are very variable from school to school. What other? Here, this is the last practice, and it is not really one practice, but it includes many different suggestions of actions or even tips that you can provide to students and to the staff. And it is mainly related to an awareness-raising campaign for students, a continuous awareness-raising campaign for students and school staff. Of course, it implies the provision of tips, and there can be a lot for the practices, shopping practices or throwing away practices, but it can include also some nice activities that you can learn in the school, you can do in the school. one that works really well and is really appreciated in general by students is to organize second-hand swap parties focused on book sharing, or even clothes sharing. And this is, well, it depends on the age of students, but books are very appreciated by kids, and clothes by teenagers. So you can implement this different swap, or you can do swap parties with toys if you are in a kindergarten, and so this is one of the hint. Then you can have a lot of tips for students on how to, when they come back to school, what to buy, how to choose their school material in order to be less wasteful, how to pack their lunch, or how to choose the snack to bring. And then another important issue is to carefully carry maintenance of school equipment regularly, to carry repairs. So, well, here you find many different hints that you can apply in the management of your school. Well, here there are really a lot. They are simple, so I'm not going to read with you, but you can go through them on your own. They are mainly tips for shopping, when coming back to school. Okay, I have completed the review of good practices that can be implemented, and also of the educational approach that you can use, and to provide you hints and suggestions on how to explain the concepts to students and teachers. So that part of the webinar is finished. I want to conclude the webinar by focusing the attention on the monitoring issue, because as I was saying, by presenting all the practices, it is always very important in an education program to monitor the results, the concrete results to obtain, and so this should be always part of the educational program, and it is foreseen in your project, as far as I know, to monitor also the waste generation. Well, this content is taken mainly, is provided also in the guidelines that you have prepared in your project, but should say add some further comments on the content of the guidelines. So you can have 3 approaches to measure and to monitor the waste generation in your school, and the choice of the approach depends, of course, on the information you have, the age of the students, the type of waste you generate in the school, the type of activity, if you have the canteen or not. And but basically you can have these 3 approaches: to ask data at your waste management at the company that is delivering the waste management service in your school. You can do a visual analysis of the waste generated in the school, or you can do waste sort analysis. As to the first method, you can ask to the waste management service provided by the local municipalities you can look at the waste management service invoices, but generally you can find in the invoice, in most cases, the waste fee is calculated according to the surface of the place, of the school or of the house. So from the invoice, you can see, you can have a reference number as to the waste generated, unless in your municipality is in place a pay-as-you-throw system for for applying the waste management fees to users. What is a pay-as-you-throw system? It is a system which is based on measuring exactly the volume or the weight of waste that is generated by each user. And this can be done in different methods. I know for sure that in the province of Treviso the system is in place, but I don't know which is the situation in the other territories where Edufootprint is implemented. There are different methods. There can be prepaid bags for waste. There can be tags applied to the bins used for waste collection, but independently from the system that is used, if you have these kinds of waste charging system in your municipality, then you have the chance to get the information on the quantities of waste you produce from the waste management service invoices. Unless you have this system, it's more difficult. If it is not this case, then you can go for a visual analysis of the waste generated, and this implies that you carefully check how the waste are collected in the school, so which are the bins, where they are placed, which is their volume, and based on this, you can have an idea of how often these bins are full of waste. So according to this, you can transform the volume of the bins in weights of waste, applying a conversion table. Here in this with this link, I provide you an example of the conversion, which means you should know the density of the waste fraction, which allows you to transform the volume of the bin in the weight of the content in the bin. And so applying this system, you can have an idea of the waste generating if you do it during 1 week. Generally, you have an idea of the waste generation in your school. And this system is then quite similar to the waste sort analysis, which is a bit more accurate. It implies, well, in your guide, I've taken these data sheets for collecting data for waste sort from the guidelines you have produced in your in the project. It implies that you check daily the containers that are used for collecting waste, and you check for each waste fraction, and for each day the number of well, you need to know the capacity of the container, the liters, and the number of emptyings that you do each day, and how full are the containers. According to this, then applying again the conversion table I was showing in the other page that converts liters according to the different fractions in weight, then you can have an estimation of your waste generation. If you can do this involving students, at least during the waste audit, and even in this case, there are a lot of examples of waste audits involving students that have been performed. Even it is interesting in some cases to start with analyzing which is the content in the residual waste bin before implementing a separate collection system, and involving them also in designing the waste collection system and the number of bins they need. But of course, this depends on the age of the students, but this can be also a suggestion of a good practice you can implement. And there are references here again. I provide you a link to to a guideline on how to do a waste audit. So, okay, I think this was my last slide. I leave you the possibility to do some questions if you have some doubts or you want to have further resources. I see that there are waste links. The links of the videos. Okay, I see that. I'm browsing the chat. Okay, I think there was just a request for the link to the videos, but okay, Roberto already answered to you, and yes, they are all in the slides that we will provide to you. So no problem. If you don't have any question, what I can do is to show you some of the videos I've not shown. In order to make you aware of the resources you can use, or I can stop. Let me know what you prefer. Okay, as I see that there are no questions, I go back. Well, I just recap very quickly the content I've shown to you, so that you have a guideline. I was saying on how to deliver this training in the schools. Well, first thing is concept of sustainable waste management, circular economy. Just make reference to the 3 R's strategy and to the circular economy concept by using a lot of, you have a lot of videos and reference resources that you can use to organize lessons. And I've provided to you some references, mainly from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation or the European Week for Waste Reduction. Then you have to implement an educational program that it better follows that is developed during the whole school year, and that it should better include both educational activities with the students, but also practical actions that you are implementing in the schools. That can be multiple ones according to the good practices, and some very good examples are to reduce paper waste, to reduce food waste, or anyhow to work on food waste reduction and on its composting, which is also another very interesting good practice. Then you can implement an effective separate collection of waste in the schools, and then you can also organize some periodical activities like second-hand swap parties with objects that are used by students, like books, toys, or clothes. And what is always important is to include in the education program during the year the monitoring of waste generation, involving also the students, and also to transform this waste generation in in terms of environmental footprint, which is what you are going to do in your project. And in the presentation that it will be available for you, you have all the links to the material I have suggested to you to use. And okay, so this is it. I see that someone is already leaving. For who's still following, I leave you by showing some of the videos that I consider most interesting, in particular those about the circular economy best practices. There is, well, I choose the ones that are in English. There is this very good one, which is about these ECONYL upcycling activities, which is, I think it's a very worth example to close this webinar about circular economy, because it shows really what can be impressive activities that can be realized on this issue. So, okay, I let the video go, but I also already greet you, because maybe some of you will not follow the video till the end, but it is not a long one.
When a leaf falls from a tree, nature breaks down and regenerates its materials to use again. We've pioneered a revolutionary way to do the same with nylon, the ECONYL regeneration system. We make quality nylon yarn, ECONYL, entirely from waste. The driving force behind this groundbreaking process is eco-visionary Giulio Bonazzi. But little did he know what he was letting himself in for.
I compare what was the original idea. It's a totally different world. We are regenerating different type of waste in a totally different way, because we vastly underestimated the difficulty of this journey. And I would say today, fortunately, because if we had known everything, I don't know if we would have started this incredible journey. So, yes, someone is saying that I was crazy. Maybe I was not crazy, simply I didn't know, and I was lucky not to know.
With ECONYL, waste is not the end, but the beginning. We needed a reliable supply, but from where? We couldn't just call for a delivery. We had to invent an entire supply chain, piece by piece, working backwards to create new systems and new partnerships.
With regard to post-consumer waste, we have two main streams. One which is coming from carpet recycling, and the second, but in terms of volume equally important, is coming from fishing. In this adventure, the collaboration with every possible partner is essential, because nothing existed before. Everything is to be invented specifically for this project. So you can imagine that we, ourselves, alone, impossible. So we really need cooperation from every possible corner.
nets that we recover and regenerate come not only from fish farms or the fishing industry, but also from projects we have like Healthy Seas. In this journey from waste to where, abandoned nets are recovered from the seas by volunteer divers and regenerated through our Econil process. Recovering these nets is complex and time-consuming, but very important, as each net could remain in the sea for 500 years, trapping and killing marine animals.
The other stream is so-called carpet fluff. What is carpet fluff? Is face fiber of post-consumer carpets that at the end of their lives are collected and separated into different components, and we recycle the so-called face fiber, and this is our small gold mine where we drill our oil. So I like to give this image of this location, because actually at the end of the day we avoid to drill oil and resources from our planet, and so we really close the loop, making a beautiful product.
The Econil reclaiming program now rescues thousands of tons of old carpet, industrial waste, and fishing nets each year. Armed with a waste supply, we had to invent our own process and machinery to regenerate nylon from it. The nylon is separated from the other waste, shredded and prepared. Then the alchemy begins. Our depolymerization plant breaks the nylon down into its building blocks. Because no quality is lost, we can polymerize it into new, high-grade nylon to spin into a range of yarns. Now, our fully operational industrial system recovers more high-performance nylon than ever thought possible, saving fossil fuels, cleaning up the oceans, giving new life to old waste, and halving CO2 emissions compared with nylon from oil. Econil is 100% regenerated and 100% regenerable infinitely. The end products? Beautiful carpets and lingerie, car interiors, and clothing. The possibilities are endless as we look to the future.
It's very important to understand this point, because today we are recycling products that may have 5, 10, 8 years of life, so that were designed, engineered long time ago without the idea and the hope that at the end they will be recycled. So it's something which is really very difficult for us. So the point where we have to invest a lot together with our clients and with our suppliers is to re-engineer today's products into something that tomorrow is more easily recyclable or completely, hopefully, recyclable. Because of course, not the dream, but the target is really not to send anything to landfill and not to take anything from our planet. So this is a very important point.
The Econil regeneration system, closing the loop. Econil, regeneration for life.
Okay, I'm back to you. Some other you are still online. But I think now we can, I really greet you and thank you again, you all, for taking part to this webinar. I hope it has provided to you content that will be useful for your future activities, and all the best to all of you. Thank you.